this doesn't put an end to shit, you fucking retard. This is just a fucking start. Why don't you go put that on your Good Morning Missouri fucking wake-up broadcast, bitch? My name is Matthew Kroll.
And I'm a little scared, but I've read it on a bookmark in a book I was reading. I can't remember if it was on Polio or Polo, which is the one with horses. This is Shahir Dowd with the worst cold ever. If you're listening in, I apologize greatly.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri.
Clarify this for me. Ebbing, Missouri is not a real place, right?
Oh, I don't know. I just took it as it was.
No, I don't think.
Google that shit.
Wait.
Live on the show. Google that shit. You can't use your voice.
No, Ebbing, Missouri is not a real place.
Wow. Well, it felt real to me.
It definitely felt real.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Sorry to borrow that from John Oliver, but I'm excited that you're all here listening to us rant and rave yet again.
For a Martin McDonagh film. Man, yeah. So, and again, hey, guys, you might have figured out the secret formula, which is that we do record multiple episodes in one night, and we've just recorded a previous episode.
Why are you telling him our secret?
Yeah, and my voice is slowly going, let's see if I can make it through this.
Say the sexiest thing you can think of right now.
Cahiers du Cinema ushered in a new era of filmmaking theory.
No, that didn't do anything for me.
No, it didn't. Not even get a mile chubby.
Nope, nothing moved.
All the Godard fans might have.
They just perked up like, huh? Yeah. What?
Cahiers du Cinema.
I'm feeling silly all of a sudden. Sheer, how you doing other than sickness?
I'm good. We're prepping for our Christmas vacation right now. So
excellent.
We're getting to get away from the New York snow, which will be nice.
Oh, yes.
I know people didn't write in to hear our vacation plans, but...
Wait, what are you doing? Where are you going?
We're going to an island of some description.
Ooh.
I'm not going to tell you which island in case there are listeners in that island who decided they don't like my Star Wars reviews and decide to.
Then your force will most assuredly awaken.
Yeah, and I don't want to check my my breakfast order with like I hate you, Shahir.
Yeah. Oh, womp 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 womp.
To be fair, nobody cares.
That's also true. That's not true. We listeners, we love you, and we love that you do care, and you write us in a bunch, and we appreciate it. If you'd like to continue reaching out to us, you can do that at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. But if you want to do something even nicer for us for this lovely holiday season, which we will be doing a Christmas episode coming up, you could leave us reviews. Where can they do it, Shahir?
You can leave us a review on iTunes. And if you're from another country, please let us know that you've left that review because we can't see that review.
Email us, please.
Email us that review because we can't see it, unfortunately, unless we switch our country of preference. You can also write us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod, especially if you like the sound of my sultry fading voice.
Oh, man, you're going to make it. You're going to make it through this.
Let's do this.
I have faith. I'm just looking at the waveform right now, and you, my friend, I feel so bad.
I'm fading, right?
Don't worry. I'll filter you up.
Yeah.
I'll make you sound like
Could you make me sound smarter?
Yes.
Could you put a Millhouse filter on me? Or something like that?
Everything's coming up Millhouse.
But this was we are coming up to the end of the year as well, which means we are going to be coming up to two things. We are going to be coming up to our Christmas episode, which is always fun. Last year we did Die Hard. This year it's probably going to be Jingling All the Way.
Jingle all the way in. Yes.
And then we're also coming up to our Best of 2017 episode, which is always fun. We would love it if you wrote in and told us your top 10, maybe your top 3 of 2017, especially if it's films that we've reviewed, because we'd love to see where it landed in terms of things we actually saw.
If you could, when you send those in, give say the movie and then like one sentence as to why, because that'll be nice and easy for us to read down, and you guys have wonderfully interesting
and just
things
for bonus points, make sure that the one sentence of why relates to the movie. Don't just say like, oh, I got it free on a subway train, someone was selling the Blu-ray or something like that. Say like, make it seem like you've actually watched the movie.
I love how there's the film professor taking a fun activity and making it not.
Yeah.
No. Well, just write us in and we'll read off a bunch of those.
In fact, this film that we're reviewing, 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, was requested to us as a film that we should definitely catch up on before the end of the year. We're still trying to. There are a couple more films that may not make it into our 2017 roster, which means that they will then be eligible for the 2018 best of, which is a really interesting dumb game that I play. But it happens all the time when you look at film reviews. For example, a lot of European reviewers have Moonlight on their top 10 list for 2017 because the film was released in early 2017.
What the fuck?
No, but to be fair, if they didn't put it in, that movie, which is amazing, would not make it into any top 10 list for a European reviewer, which would be unfair.
I mean, in their districts, you're saying?
In their countries, like so Moonlight came out at the end of the year in America. It didn't hit London until early 2017, which means it ends up in the 2017 end of year.
We didn't hit London until late 2017.
Hi-yo.
Hey, we went to the EMAs, but that's enough of that. Look, the signs all pointed me towards this film, Shahir.
You were excited about this.
I know that you don't watch trailers.
Yeah, I don't watch trailers.
We've talked about this at length.
Ad nauseum. Nobody cares.
But no, I think new listeners might. I do watch trailers. I love trailers. And I saw this trailer. You might have sent it to me. I don't quite remember how I came across it.
I felt like you sent that to me as in it was like, oh, we should do this movie.
Maybe I did, but I don't know. And I was just psyched. It felt fresh and interesting and a little bit true crimey, even though I don't think it is, but the trailer kind of makes it that way, and I'm into all that stuff. Frances McDormand, man.
National treasure.
What the hell? She's just so good.
Yeah.
And this film is no exception to that rule. And it had a lot of people in it that I liked. I had, Sam Rockwell is always a personal favorite of mine, as is, Woody Harrelson is touch and go, but I think he did a great job here. I really dug it. I don't want to, I guess I could get into my initial thoughts about it. Actually, I don't really have a history with
McDonagh.
Yeah, I've seen Seven Psychopaths.
Okay,
but I don't particularly remember it.
Okay.
And I have never seen In Bruges,
which is I know sacrosanct at this point. Yeah.
I know. I will do it. I just haven't. So I kind of went in not really knowing what to expect.
To be honest with you, I haven't seen him in Bruges. Immediately, all of our listeners are like, "You fucking guys." Who the fuck?
Well, now this has been the only podcast that you don't have to listen to us anymore because we've lost all credibility.
I have not seen In Bruges. I have not seen Seven Psychopaths. I have seen a short film, Six Shooter, and I've seen his brother's movie, The Guard. Yeah, well, if that counts for anything, I've seen that. And I gotta admit that like Martin McDonagh is an esteemed playwright who has garnered a solid reputation as being able to, as a fine wordsmith, so to speak, a person who can write excellent. Did I say execant? Execant.
What does execant mean? I like it. Yeah. It's either wonderful or a skin condition.
Yeah. It's a skin condition.
Oh,
and
it's a wonderful skin condition.
And I'm spreading it to you via your e-holes right now.
Great.
But he can write a fine turn of phrase a la Quentin, but also a violent turn of phrase a la Quentin Tarantino, as evidenced by In Bruges and Seven Psychopaths, two films I have not seen. So this is actually, other than his Academy Award winning short film Six Shooter, the first Martin McDonagh film I've seen, other than knowing very well the
other than his brother's movie.
Other than his brother's movie. His brother is a fine filmmaker as well. So I, like you, I had wanted to. I wanted to see this. I thought the trailer was not the trailer. I thought the conceit of the film was something I was very interested in. The idea of putting billboards up. The suggested rage that this film kind of encapsulated at police brutality and at police inefficiency, for example, that I heard was emanating from this film. This film was actually written 7 years ago, but it seemed to hit at the exact coalescence with the Me Too movement in an interesting way, where that sort of feminine rage seemed to be something that resonated particularly with this film. So for all those reasons, I was really interested in seeing it. Matt, can you tell us what the synopsis of Three Billboards is?
I sure can. IMDb describes Three Billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri as
not a real place.
A mother personally challenges the local authorities to solve her daughter's murder when they fail to catch the culprit.
Wait, did that mention the billboards?
Nope.
Didn't mention the billboards.
Well, it's in the title, I guess. Challenging authorities via the billboards.
I get you.
I mean, IMDb, we are available for writing gigs if you need us.
We could just copy and paste the title for this one.
Yeah.
So, Matt, what did you think of the film?
I look.
First thoughts, no spoilers.
First thoughts, no spoilers. Hitting you with my best shot, firing away. Cast, like I said, sort of initially off the charts. Loved him to death. Characters are front and center here. It's real feeling, yet people are reacting in hyper realistic ways, which is very difficult to pull that off. So it felt like it had weight there. Structurally, this is something interesting, and I thought when I noticed it happening, I was like, "Oh, this is going to weigh on me," and it didn't. It feels I coined the term structurally ranty.
Okay.
Meaning
you heard it here first.
It twists and turns between characters in different parts of the journey. It felt unregulated and sort of unlike anything scripted that I'd seen in a while. But like for instance, there's a moment where a character basically becomes a narrator.
Yeah.
And that doesn't normally like from a classical structure doesn't really happen. There's a lot of little things like that where you just feel like no character in this film is in control, but the world is barreling on. And that's something that normally a character or characters are pushing the world along. This just felt like life, man.
Yeah.
And that was super refreshing. Counterpoint, however, to the film's greatness, there are a couple of weird sort of moments in it from a cultural or racial sort of standpoint where I noticed it kind of turned some very hot button issues into just sort of one-liners. And I don't know if that services itself in any way. And then the second,
what do you think? Do you think it discredits the movie, or it actually?
I think it services the characters, but it does do this weird thing where it makes something horrible trite.
Okay.
Due to
did it turn you off the movie enough?
Not enough. I mean, look, I think this is a tapestry, and those were little parts that I didn't particularly like. I don't think it's a reason to not see the film. The film's great.
No, because we're in an era of the Me Too thing, but it's but it's also like the divorcing of art from artists is kind of part of the conversation of like, can I enjoy a film knowing that something is off about it?
This isn't even from the artist's perspective.
Yeah, but this is much more in the character
things.
Yeah. But it might point to a discrepancy of care.
And also, I mean, the thing is, race is a little bit of a hot button issue in this film.
You think?
But this is the kicker of it. Even though it is a hot button issue, who gets the redemption arc?
Right.
Like that's an odd question. Like that's why are we focusing on this prick?
Yeah.
So but those things aside, I always want to temper my like I loved it with like actual like criticism, because there's always things that I feel can be done better. And we can get into sort of why and how as we move along. But Shahir, what about you, buddy? Which of the three Billboards was your favorite? Which one?
Why Captain Willoughby?
Yeah. With the big old question mark.
Yeah, no, so this movie gave me a lot to chew on, and in interesting ways, it kind of the walk home from this movie was a really interesting one for me in terms of like the conversation that was going on in my brain, and it got me thinking a lot about a couple of things. And the first one is the inevitable link to the Coen brothers. I think it was a really good starting point. Obviously, Frances McDormand is married to one of the Coen brothers, is a regular feature of Coen brother films, such as Fargo and Burn After Reading. And the movie was scored by Carter Burwell, who's also a Coen brothers regular collaborator. It also has this kind of small town Coen brother-esque absurdity to it.
Sure.
But I was thinking about my relationship to the Coen brothers film versus my relationship to this film, my response to this film. And that led me into an interesting rabbit hole to think about my relationship to religion, of all things.
What?
So I, as you know, am not a religious person, but I would say the closest thing I have to religion is the movies.
Yes, we've talked about this.
Yeah, and what I think what I find in the movies that I think a lot of people find in religion is this sense of film allows us to make order out of chaos and allows us to give meaning to events that may be otherwise meaningless. And I think that's what religion does to it for a lot of people. And the Coen brothers are particularly good at that, especially if you look at a film like, say, for example, Barton Fink or No Country for Old Men, which is about the chaos of the universe and its indifference to human beings, but somehow those films make sense of that chaos, even if the underlying answer is the world is just chaotic and you can't control it. Which I think is the major theme in No Country for Old Men. And this film in particular, coming back to Three Billboards, had this unnerving experience for me, which is that it made me ask a lot of interesting questions particularly about its ending and where the film resolves. I don't want to give it away because of spoilers. Just yet because of spoilers.
But it's a weird ending.
It is an unusual ending. And what I couldn't make heads or tails about is whether that ending was not just where that ending is, but how deliberate the film was in its ability to ask those questions. Because, like you say, there are some things this film handles expertly and wonderfully, and then there are some things that this film handles with a really tone deaf kind of approach, and feels like we just haven't thought about this in any way. And if a film is supposed to strike up a conversation, then good or bad, those are worthy things to have. But like you, I found that this was a unique experience that barreled out of control in sort of interesting ways that I wasn't always convinced about. And I wasn't always convinced that the writer and the director had a handle on the way to take these stories. But I always felt like they were in command of their, I never
felt facilities
of their facilities, and I never felt that they weren't doing the film that they wanted to make. I never felt this wasn't the film Martin McDonagh wanted to make, that the film got away from him or anything like that. But there are some really tone deaf elements to this movie, and there are some really unusual side tangents to this movie, particularly in relation to police brutality, domestic abuse, and racial inequality and racial violence that this film treats occasionally really masterfully and then occasionally really poorly. And the fact that it touches on all those issues is worthwhile and interesting. The fact that we are in an era now where we're sensitive to that approach, like we'll watch a film from the 70s, French Connection or something like that, and police brutality will be rampant and we'll kind of brush it off as, oh, well, that was the 60s. But we're in an era now where everything matters and representation matters.
Hell, you can I'll even give you something lighter. You can rewatch Friends and there's like rampant homophobia in Friends, and you're like, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
And
But so we're just in a different place right now. So some things do come across as tone deaf in this film. But on the whole, I think this was a really unique experience. So coming back to my thing about religion and my thing about the religion of cinema, if you will, is this idea that cinema, movies, stories allow us to find order in events that may not have order. And this was a decidedly anti-cathartic film for me. This was a film that went out of its way to not give you a sense of order. It kind of perpetually worked in chaos.
Felt like life.
But not in a way that I think, say, a Coen Brothers-esque film would find order.
Not comforting.
No, but I don't think even the Coen Brothers find comfort. I think
their structure and the fact that they structure a film a certain way, and many filmmakers do this to make a complete
They make a point, and I'm not sure. Yeah. I walked out of this going, I'm not sure what the point was, but I didn't feel like the film was misfiring. I felt that there was just a lot to chew on and a lot to digest. Now, in spoilers, I think we'll get to the meat of that, of what that point might be.
We're going to be Arby's all up in this bitch.
Yeah,
we got the meats.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I did enjoy it, even though the film left me feeling uneasy a lot of the time. And I thought it was a really interesting experience. Now, there's a lot of Oscar buzz, SAG award buzz around this movie. A lot of, movement around this movie to encapsulate. You know, it's an awards. It's in the awards season kind of thing. I'm not sure it's a film that works in that respect, but it does. You know, definitely ask some interesting questions.
This movie reeks of a film that will be nominated for a trillion things and win none of them.
Yeah. You're right.
Sad?
It does feel that way, and that is a curious space to occupy. Arguably, a more interesting space to occupy.
It's an honor just be nominated.
Yeah, there you go. But I think to avoid tiptoeing around the things we're talking about,
we can get into spoilers.
We should jump into spoilers.
Let's just start talking about the film. So Mildred, played by the wonderful and enigmatic, is that the right word?
Enigmatic.
See, I fucked it up. It's late, guys. Frances McDormand. She basically notices a bunch of billboards conveniently located in front of her property. I thought it was kind of funny that she drove by them like, I've never seen these billboards before. She could see them from her porch.
Yeah.
I don't
think she was saying she couldn't see them.
No, but like maybe she just got the idea. I don't know.
Yeah, I got the impression that she was like searching for an idea.
Yeah.
And the billboard suddenly coalesced.
Her daughter was murdered 7 months prior and no arrests have been made. So she puts up 3 billboards. She rents them off of a dying town road that was out since the freeway was put in. Always a sucker for some
also
psycho
where
story.
she lives.
Yeah, but also right where she lives.
Yeah.
And they read as follows: raped while dying and still no arrests. How come Chief Willoughby? Those are the three signs in red with black font.
I thought her grammar was a little poor on those.
Well, I think they were character-wise correct for her.
Maybe.
So she goes and she rents them off of this guy Red, who owns a sign company in town, conveniently located right across the police station in this little Ebbing,
played by
Missouri.
Caleb Landry Jones, who's also in Get Out this year.
Yeah,
really interesting actor. And he was also in the Florida Project for a few moments.
Yes.
So really interesting actor who's like popping up in some interesting movies.
So this obviously pisses off the police department. The Chief Willoughby, played by Woody Harrelson, and a cadre of other police officers. Dixon, played by Sam Rockwell, is the aforementioned super racist cop.
Yeah.
Kind of an inept super racist cop. And it like this big clash in the town sort of ensues. And Mildred and Willoughby confronts Mildred about them eventually after he notices them.
Yeah.
And eventually it's interesting because they're going back and forth, and then he tries to drop this bomb on her that he has cancer and he's dying.
Doesn't that moment come off like completely nonchalantly to you? Like it was like, oh, and I have cancer.
Well, he brought it up. He was just like, he was trying to tiptoe around it a bit, and then she's like, "I know everyone in town knows." This was the moment where I was like, "This is going to be an intricate character dance for all of these people," because you could tell Mildred didn't not care, but that's not what this is about. This is about finding justice for her daughter.
Yeah. And I think, but it, you know, like you say, it kind of it ups the ante narrative wise in terms of how these characters are going to weave around each other, because suddenly the stakes for Willoughby are not just, oh, I didn't solve this case. This might be what I'm remembered for.
Yeah.
And so that weighs heavily on his mind. Perhaps, you know, intentionally by Frances McDormand's character.
It puts more weight on what she's doing too, because it's going to. She wants results, and she knows she has to be messy to do it.
Right, and I think, you know, like the thing that I was talking about in terms of like feeling uncomfortable or unsure of where this film was kind of had its head, what all kind of comes together around the character of Dixon, played by Sam Rockwell. Sam Rockwell, love him. The guy is an amazing dancer of all things, but also an incredible actor who's been around for a while. We all love Sam Rockwell.
What up, Justin Hammer?
There you go. Was he the Hebrew? He wasn't the Hebrew Hammer.
No, Justin Hammer. He was the villain in Iron Man 2.
Was he?
Next to Whiplash.
There you go.
Mickey Rourke.
There you go. Dixon is a self-professed, not even a self-professed racist, but a person who has been accused of torturing African-American people, citizens in his neighborhood. And that adds a layer of complexity to this, because Mildred is often saying, well, I think the police just don't have enough time to look after my daughter because they're out there, you know, torturing black people. The thing that becomes difficult about this is that issue has little to no agency in a black character in this film.
Yes.
And it's what's even more sort of disturbing, not disturbing maybe is too strong a word, but Mildred has another coworker with her at
a gift shop.
At the gift shop she works at, an African American woman who is arrested because she pissed off, because Dixon is trying to get to her.
Dixon's mom, who he lives with, is like, go after her friends.
Yeah, go after her friends. And so she's arrested for a small time charge of marijuana. But that, like you said, is kind of treated almost indifferently.
Yeah.
And then she, that character returns to the
She's
story.
like, I got out.
I'm going to help you with your billboard, which kind of like gives her this sort of best black friend, who has no story outside of this main narrative, which is just a sort of, it puts this film in a sort of interesting space that
of wokeness next to tone deaf.
Yeah, and that's what it is. It's this tone deafness that kind of doesn't really ring true.
Even the N-word joke in the police station, she goes, "You're too busy torturing N-word to look after my daughter," and Dixon goes, and it's meant to play for a laugh.
Yeah.
Dixon's like, he says, you can't say N-word anymore. You have to say out torturing African-American people.
Yeah.
And like,
the joke doesn't land, right?
No, and it's meant to be uncomfortable for the character, but it just ends up being an uncomfortable moment for everyone. With like, this movie does so many things right that when it hits these sort of wrong moments, I'm really like, what? Where is this coming from?
Exactly, and there's even an appearance by one of my favorite actors, a guy by the name of Clark Peters, who played Lister Freeman in The Wire.
Yep.
I always just love this guy, and you would think that it seems like the inclusion of him, who comes in to replace Chief Willoughby, will shake up the story in that way. But it really
does not.
It really doesn't. And it's even preceded by a moment of extreme police brutality, extreme police
with no consequence whatsoever,
with absolutely no consequence, and it's filmed in a way that kind of, and this is a comparison that happens to McDonagh a lot, but filmed kind of like a Tarantino movie. It has this sort of Tarantino absurdist, somewhat sort of giallo, the Italian blood kind of horror feel to it, but it has no consequence. It comes out of left field, and it doesn't change the film. It doesn't change our impression too much of Dixon. Even to the point, the thing that you mentioned later on, which is that Willoughby writes a note to Dixon. He becomes a narrator after his suicide. Big spoiler for later in the film. Hopefully you're in spoilers by this point. But Willoughby says something to Dixon, which is like, "I know you're a good cop, down in the heart." And I was like, when I watched that, I was like,
how?
Really? Are you? I think you've demonstrated that you're not at this point, and the film hasn't demonstrated that you are.
I took that as, even for the way he treats him when he's alive, he doesn't believe that. I took that as this is his last ditch effort to try to get this guy to turn around. So he's telling him he believes in him.
Right. But that is, in terms of tone deafness.
Yeah.
The events that the film, the things that Dixon have done in this film,
well, the other thing
do not warrant like, hey, let's give him another shot.
He gets put in the same hospital as Red, who he threw out a second-story window, and then like Red forgives him. And I'm like, what the?
Yeah.
Why? I mean, Sam Rockwell's a great actor. Cool. Why is Dixon the character being given so much fucking leeway?
Yeah, he really, and again, for a movie that has little to no black agency.
Yeah, because we've only seen one of his atrocities that happened to be to a white person on camera.
But that atrocity in itself is awful, and you get what you're not sure about is whether that is playing it in this sort of Tarantino ultra-violent kind of way, or whether it is, since it is trying to show his brutality. And if it's trying to show his brutality, Chief Willoughby's letter then seems even more tone deaf, because why should this guy deserve another shot? Now, this is all, again, I apologize, my voice is going now.
There's no excuse.
This is all counterpointed by the ending of this film, which again I would describe as anti-cathartic, which doesn't wrap it in a sort of nice way, but offers a sort of more complex question about the value of vengeance, even if the vengeance isn't earned for the crime that's been committed to you. And I think that is That is a really interesting question. And I think it opens this film up in an interesting way. I don't know whether the film meant to do that necessarily, because again, there's this balance of tone deaf with really smart writing. So it's a curious case of Benjamin Button here, where I'm aging backwards listening to, thinking about this film. But I'm more on, because there is so much interesting things in this film, I'm more on the sides of giving it the benefit of the doubt. Maybe I'm Chief Willoughbying this film at this point, which is
maybe. But let's talk about Willoughby for a second, because Mildred is good. She's the protagonist, no doubt.
Yeah.
Willoughby, dude, I cried when his wife read the letter when he killed himself.
Right. It's a lovely note.
And like to the point where after it was done, I was like, what movie am I watching?
Yeah.
Like, because what happens?
His story becomes suddenly a different story.
Yeah. He's dying. He's getting worse and worse and worse. And he basically doesn't want his family to see him wither and die. He wants to go out. He wants to burn out rather than fade away.
Yeah.
So, he has a perfect day. He invents this weird little magnet game for his kids to like pretend to be fishing on a thing while he can go sleep with his wife in the woods. His wife, wasn't she a little young for him?
Played by Abby Cornish, Australian actress, who's a fantastic actress, by the way.
She's a little young.
Yeah, and
It felt a little weird.
That's not the first character that has a exceedingly younger wife.
No, but no one calls Willoughby out on it.
Right.
And the other one is exceeding. Anyway, has a perfect day. They go home. They have a very intimate moment with one another, and then he goes out to quote feed the horses, and he puts a note on a bag that says "Don't open the bag," and he shoots himself in the head, and he leaves a bunch of different notes. Like
P.S. I love you, this whole thing.
Yeah, and it's this beautiful finite thing about death that is in the middle of this movie about sort of something else.
Yeah.
And I think that's what goes back to, even for all the things I've listed that I didn't appreciate or didn't land for me, this movie feels more like real life, like shit just happens and you have to fucking adapt or you're gonna not make it, than any film I've seen in a long time. And there's something just, get this. I don't know if this is appropriate, but it feels like this is the classy, meaningful way to elicit the same type of I need to see what happens continually as sort of reality train wreck television. Like it invokes the same need to continue on. Now, granted, it's way better than reality television, but like it taps into that same, like, I have no clue what's going to happen.
Right. And
most narratives do not do that.
Right.
It's a chaos to it.
Yeah, and again, that's the kind of thing that that the Coen brothers are good at wrapping around in an interesting. The film I was going to think about was there's a filmmaker who made 2 extraordinary movies in a row, and then I'm just looking whether he actually continued making films. A guy by the name of Todd Field, who directed a film called In the Bedroom, and then followed it with a film called an incredible film called Little Children. Who did a similar thing, which is that he In the Bedroom in particular, took a story about young and old love and then transformed it into a vengeance story in a way that seemed chaotic but wrapped meaning around it. So I wouldn't have immediately jumped to reality television. But I would have like McDonagh's background as a playwright felt more appropriate, particularly in the monologues written by Willoughby. There was also a lot of playwrighty things that felt a little off. So, for example, Mildred talks to her shoes in one scene, sort of like trying to make a decision about what to do. That felt a little, And similarly, the thing that you were mentioning about Abby Cornish, his wife, John Hawkes appears in this movie as Mildred's ex-husband. Abusive ex-husband, which is always kind of treated as a little bit of a joke, but he now has a younger 19-year-old wife who kind of jumps in as comedic relief as she watches her new much older husband abuse his ex-wife.
Yeah.
And there's this kind of like flippancy with which that character is dealt with. She's given a moment, but it's an odd moment, and it's an odd moment of comic relief. It's the line that I read out at the beginning of the film, where she basically makes jokes while her husband, continues to be a domestic abuser.
She doesn't make jokes. She says stupid shit that is a joke for the audience.
But it's a joke for the audience. Like it's comic relief. And similarly, there's a character in Caleb Landry Jones's office, the secretary, who gets beaten up later in the movie, whose sole function is there to kind of inject jokes in this like awkward scene. She's treated as sort of like a ditzy secretary. And there's a writerly quality to those scenes where it's like the jokes are wordplay. They're not like real character jokes. They're not like something happened that's situationally funny. It's wordplay jokes, like, was it polio? Was it polo? I can't remember, and
it's almost like they're really clever and the writer got excited about it and then just didn't quite realize they didn't really fit.
Right. Yeah. And McDonagh kind of, there's a sort of oddness. Again, it's that slightly tone deafness to it all. And it makes for uncomfortable viewing. But again, I never felt that McDonagh as writer and director was out of his reach with this film. Like he's a very confident writer and director. And there's a lot of confident writing in this movie. And again, that last idea in this movie, again, the spoiler here is that Dixon finally, as Chief Willoughby predicts it in a letter, finds the stupidest way to possibly find the rapist and murderer, and then it turns out that he's not the rapist and murderer, even though there's this elaborate scheme to get skin under the fingernails, and he proposes to Frances at the end, well, he raped somebody. So is that good enough? Can we just, do this? And the film ends with this note of like, are we actually going to do this?
They're literally driving in a car and they say, are we really going to kill this guy? And the other one's like, well, we'll decide when we get there.
We'll decide when we get there.
We're on the way. We'll decide on the way.
Which is this sort of odd note about vengeance, which is that, violence begets more violence. Like, did she say beget? But also like
delicious breakfast pastry baguette.
But does vengeance require actual catharsis? And in this case, they might get vengeance without catharsis. And is that enough? And I thought that was a really interesting idea that comes at the last second of this movie.
And it fits tonally with how this film is like anti-structured.
Yeah.
Like I didn't see it coming like that.
Right,
but I don't know. I don't know.
But that's what our job is here, is to try and make sense of this.
Are we getting paid?
Yeah,
who's paying us?
Yeah, nobody.
Oh man.
But again, for the tone deafness with which it handles race, the tone deafness with which it handles domestic abuse kind of as comedy. There's even Peter Dinklage is in this film, and he seems to be there because it's fun to make midget jokes, and because his character arc actually has little to no reason to be in this film, and it could have been fulfilled by any function, by any actor, but he seems to. Peter Dinklage is a really great leading man kind of actor, and he kind of is brought in just to kind of take the blame for when Frances McDormand sets fire to a police station. And it was like this odd sort of like,
he makes an excuse for it.
Yeah, but I was like, are we going to do more with this character? Because you've got this like really well-known actor in this position. Are you going to do more with this? No, you're not really going to do more with this.
The more we're talking about this, the less I like it. Why are we doing this?
Because again, everything I'm saying is all counterpointed by that really unique ending and the unique setup. I like the idea of this movie. I like this idea of like putting police, like taking justice into your own, like shaming the police into action. I think that's a really interesting idea. And I think again, it goes in odd directions and does things that I don't think really work or land, but then it ends in a place that I think is interesting.
Yeah. No, the entire thing is interesting, and I enjoy it. I enjoy the emotion and the aliveness that this film brings and feels, because it's not like any other film that I've seen in a long time. But the second you actually start looking at the minutia, it gets weirder and weirder. And it's not even like I can excuse the stuff that I don't like as bits of character things that I don't like. Oh, that character's a bad person, so they do this. It's like intrinsic in the way it's written and portrayed to us. It's beyond the character. And that to me, it just feels so wrong or unskilled or maybe
tone deaf.
I guess that's ignorant. But the
writing,
shocking thing is the film is not written from an ignorant place. There's just bits of ignorance sprinkled in.
Yeah.
And I don't get it. I think that's what keeps me sort of uneasy about this film is I don't understand how the movie that made me feel this way can also just sort of drop the ball drop a bunch of tiny balls.
That's that comparison to the Coen brothers that I think is really useful, just in terms of like trying to figure out where we stand on this film. Is that, you know, the Coen brothers are really amazing at deadpan humor. They're really amazing at big comedy in amongst dark films, and they manage to tie it all together. This doesn't quite tie all these things together, but I think it's playing in an interesting universe, and it's got for every thing that's wrong with it, there are so many things that are great about it. And you know, like, again, I guess I come from a point of view where I would rather have a film fail in an interesting way than have something succeed in a sort of cookie cutter way. And this is certainly not cookie cutter. This is something much bigger than that.
I like both of those things.
Right. I would take that. You can't argue that this film doesn't have ambition. And you can't argue that this film doesn't have ideas that it wants to explore. You can't argue that you may not agree with any of those ideas or some of those ideas, and I don't. But I'm willing to step up and play and figure out what the bad is on this movie. The thing is, and I would put it down to this sort of mixed bag here, which is that when this movie works, when it has, I think the place where it really works is in the sense of unfulfilled rage that Frances McDormand's character Mildred has. Where it doesn't work is in the broader play of race, politics.
Let's redeem a violent bigot.
Yeah. But see, I don't begrudge the film for trying to redeem a violent bigot. I don't think that is inherently a bad idea. I think a film can do that.
Yeah, but
this film doesn't quite do it very well.
But out of all the characters in the film, right? Like, I don't think Dixon deserves. I'm not saying the performance. I'm saying the character.
Yeah.
Deserves less screen time than, say, her friend at the gift shop. At the gift shop.
No,
that's for a movie whose main character is cheekily trying to stand up a little bit, yet she lets her friend rot in jail.
Yeah.
Stand up in one way, just totally like goes and status quos it the rest of the way through.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that I think I've seen some reviewers take a stand on this film for trying to give Dixon a redemption story. I don't think giving Dixon a redemption story is inherently a bad idea. I think the film is not convincing about why, and that's what people should respond to. Is that it's not the idea. You know, like the film I was thinking about, oddly, I was trying to think of films with like anti-heroes, you know, people who are bad people who get some form of redemption, and for some reason, there might be a metatextual thing in this. The film that I kept landing on was LA Confidential. And the character is Kevin Spacey's character, who has been portrayed to be like a bad person the whole way through, but ultimately redeems himself by the end of the movie. And I think there's a real fine balance that film does with his character. Now,
as opposed to a favorite film of mine this year, Kevin Spacey as well, Baby Driver, whose character arc went from bad guy to good guy for no fucking reason.
No reason whatsoever. Yeah, that's a really good counterpoint. Yeah. But what I don't want to say is that I don't think the idea of giving Dixon a redemption story is a bad idea.
I just think that with I think that there's and I don't even think they do it fine. Like they could have done it better,
right? But
they should have put more weight on the people that Dixon hurt.
Yes,
and that would have helped everything. That would have helped Dixon. That would have helped these characters. They wouldn't have just been fucking cutouts.
But the thing is, Dixon's redemption story is actually complex now because of that ending. Because he doesn't.
And they can still do that and do the other stuff.
No, but what I'm saying is he doesn't actually get the guy that killed Mildred's daughter. He gets another guy, and he might be, he could be completely wrong about this person, and so that complicates our relationship to the film because he's not just getting a full redemption story. He's actually walking into something where he may be falling further down a rabbit hole, and he's taking Mildred with him now. And I think that's the kind of question that ending arises for me that makes this interesting.
So maybe it's not a redemption arc.
No, maybe it's not. Maybe it does something more profound with it. And I guess, look, our goal as reviewers is to unbox that whole thing. And I think this film, again, coming back to my religious analogy, it unpacks in sort of weird ways where things like Mildred's story are really deftly handled and really well handled, and things like Willoughby's suicide are really well handled. But things like Dixon's the consequence of Dixon's brutality are completely tone deaf.
There's no consequence in this film at all.
Yeah, and that is tone deaf.
And we talked about this, and I don't want to go back to Star Wars. We were talking about consequence and sort of things like that. This film, while I think the structure of it will stay in my mind more than say The Last Jedi will, but I would say The Last Jedi has more like character consequence because this. Big things happen in Three Billboards. Big things.
Yeah.
That then no one gives a shit about. And it doesn't even feel like the world changes at all. And for a film to feel so real and chaotic in one sense is another dichotomy to even the stuff I was talking about before. And then have moments of a police station was just fucking Molotov cocktailed. Signs were burned.
Yeah.
There multiple beatings of people. Nothing. Like nothing. And I'm not saying I want to see that dragged out, but like if nothing has consequence, then why am I why do I care?
I don't think it's a case of why am I watching it because the story continues to propel forward.
Well, then I guess because you're right. Those things. Then how does this world work?
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think is hard to get a handle on because again, cinema, movie, storytelling is about, to me, at least from like my framework of it is about making order out of things that don't make sense, and it's not the case that the film has to wrap up in an interesting way, but the film has to offer a commentary or it has to like make a stand on this.
And so what's the what do you think overall?
Yeah,
because I have an idea. Mm-hmm. What do you think this movie's trying to say? That's a good place, I think, to sort of as we're coming slowly to a close. But what do you, Shahir Daud, think this film wants you to take away?
I think the thing that is interesting in this film is that the world is indifferent to our suffering.
Sure,
and we may not get the thing we really want, which is that sense that I had in this film, which is feeling anti-cathartic. There is no sense, the order doesn't line up as we would want it to. And I think the thing is, though, obviously a film like No Country for Old Men does that in a much more eloquent way because every moment of No Country for Old Men points to that conclusion,
right?
Whereas every moment in this film doesn't point to that conclusion. But again, I think the ending of this film, this idea that they're both walking into the death of a character that may not have actually had anything to do with the thing that they're upset about, and their willingness to go along with that points to that anti-catharsis that I think is unique, is interesting. Now, again, I think that the film is tone deaf in many ways. It does things that are objectionable from a story point of view and misses the mark in many respects. But it has a lot on its mind, and I would much rather give a film with ambition the benefit of a doubt. I'm losing my voice, so that's why I'm going to wrap up.
Yeah. No, I think it has it. You actually hit the nail on the head. I think earlier, couple 10 minutes back, where it's this idea of what is vengeance. I think this movie overall, because even from the beginning,
what is I think justice is a better word rather than vengeance.
No, I think it might start there, but I think it ends with vengeance because, justice and vengeance are two different things, which is interesting because in the beginning, Mildred feels that justice has not been served to her daughter. Right. They have not caught the killer.
Yeah.
So she takes vengeance on Willoughby and the police department. She does a vengeful act that she knows will hurt them and get their attention to move things forward. Dixon takes a vengeance thing to the sign maker because he feels, or the sign leaser, I should say, because he feels that Willoughby killed himself due to the signs.
Yeah.
And at the end of this, Mildred and Dixon going away sort of does this thing about like, okay, we've tried multiple ways to get justice and failed every fucking way.
Yeah.
Will vengeance do? And that's
you know the best analogy I thought about with that in mind?
I think that's what the movie's trying to say. Sorry.
Yeah. But the most interesting analogy I thought about with that in mind was because, the movie does sort of take a stake in portraying Americana. And, it's very much about like the American psyche in some respect. Martin McDonagh is not an American. So, it has that sense of like being anthropological in some way. Boy, my voice is really going.
You're doing it. You can make it.
Yeah, come on, cheer me on here. No, but the thing that I thought about, that somewhat resonated in this idea of going off and seeking vengeance in the wrong direction was invading Iraq after 9/11. Where the case was made for Iraq being somehow involved with 9/11 when the facts didn't stack up about it. But there was this sort of like underlying case that we should just go in and, take out a bad dude.
Culturally.
Yeah.
Not because governmentally it was for placement and oil and all that shit. But from a common American psyche standard.
Yeah, there was this sense that, and it's this idea of misguided vengeance, which I thought, that's what played in my mind as they rolled off into the sunset to take vengeance upon this man who also interestingly was a soldier, and Clark Peters says, it's very sandy where he was. He was out of the country when this happened. Also, he goes and terrorizes Mildred for no reason in her shop. Very clumsily handled, that scene. And also his confession at the bar, really clumsily handled. He's like literally telling the story of how he murdered and killed someone, where
in a very specific way that is because Mildred's daughter was burnt. Her corpse was burnt after the fact.
Yeah, not even within an earshot. It's literally like almost standing back to back, like the ABBA music video.
Yeah.
So very clumsily handled.
Very interesting correlation, the ABBA music video.
Yeah. But so that's what I thought about. And that's where, again, if the movie stumbles into a big idea like that in an interesting way, then I'm kind of okay with giving it the benefit of the doubt. But I will say there is a lot of tone deafness in this movie, and tone deafness that you feel immediately. I'm gonna slink out of this podcast at this moment.
You're gonna slink? You're gonna be a slinky?
Because I'm gonna crawl out.
Okay. Well, listen. I think we've determined that this particular film is one that is. I'll speak for Shahir while he's hacking up his throat. Is with all of its things that we've said about it in both positive and negative senses, and I almost feel like we went a little bit more negative, but at the same time, not from a place of wanting to discredit or even to push it away from us. I feel like the things that it does wrong sort of bring more of a conversational tone around the film and sort of get the conversation going outside of the theater. And for that, I will agree and say it's nice to see a film that, even for all of its tone deafness, gets a conversation moving. And I've had multiple conversations with people who have seen this film that starts with, I really loved it. And then one of us will say something the other one disagrees with, and then we'll just go. There's something beautifully chaotic to it being able to do all of those things. It does so many things, good or bad, it does them all. And with an ending that is odd and weirdly appropriate for the oddness of structure that we just saw. And I think it's definitely worth your time and worth your money to seek out. I don't think it's going to win any awards because, again, it just feels like that. Like, oh, everyone loves it and you're not winning shit.
Shahir gives thumbs up.
Shahir gives thumbs up. Yay. So this has been the only podcast about the film 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. Shahir, I'm going to do your voice because you can't do it. Where can folks find you when you can speak? You can find me at shahirdowd.com. I'm not going to try to do your accent. That's be insulting. And you can find my life and works there. Also, you can find us at onlymoviepodcast.com for our podcasts. And also... I don't know why I just made you super monotone. You can also, I'm going to go back to me. You can find us at Only Movie Pod on Twitter. You can get in touch with us. Tell us what you thought of 3 Billboards. Tell us what you thought, what problems or praises you can reap upon it, and what you thought was the big takeaway, what you thought the filmmakers were trying to get across to us. You can also find me, Matthew Kroll, at MATTHEWKROL.com for all of my life and works. Also Skeletor, the number 4, PREZ on Instagram, and Emperor MSK on Twitter. Also still doing that lovely stuff with James Portnow and Extra Credits every Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern, doing a bunch of fun video game playthrough stuff, hanging out with some good friends, and it is a lot of fun. I guess we're going to wrap it up. And Shahir, let's just end it with this. I just want you to be silent if you think that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the greatest thing to ever happen in all of cinema. Sorry, I'm having a rumbly in my tumbly. It's time for me to eat some dinner. Anyway, so I guess that settles the argument. We will now know that Shahir Dowd endorses the MCU. I just had to bring it there. Until next time, Shahir, I hope you feel better, buddy. I hope your throat heals itself. And we'll be back next time with a little bit of holiday cheer. So until then, chug that eggnog, and we will see you next week. Bye.